Hello guys, welcome to Sociology Revision Series. So in this session, we will be talking about industrial class structure. This is from your paper 2. In fact, when we discussed about paper 1 also, we have discussed about industrial class structure, especially when it comes to Marx. So here in paper 2, what we need to do is, in introduction, you will be talking about, or you will be giving a definition of industrial class structure. And then you talk about the perspective on class by Marx and Weber. You can briefly bring in, though it's paper 2, still in the intro, you can talk about Marx and Weber. Then we can talk about the other things, right? You can talk about evolution of industrial society in India. And that, again, you can divide into pre-independence and post-independence. And pre-independence, you talk about early industrialization, that is 1870s. And then you talk about the role of Swadeshi movement and world wars, and then challenges of workers at that point of time. And the perspectives, like Marxist perspective, you can talk about functionalist perspective. Post-independence, you talk about role of public sector industries, labor laws, and economic planning. And then you need to talk about the post-LPG reforms, 1991 onwards. So you can discuss the informal employment, income disparities, and the CSR growth, and then increase in white-collar jobs like that. And when it comes to perspective, you can discuss Morris perspective. So two views on industrial labor behavior and the common consequences as well. Again, if you look at more perspective, you can talk about Watermore's view. That's the class categories. I hope you know this. Guys, this is a revision session. So this is not like I'm discussing the topic as such, because this is going to be a couple of videos I need to take, right? If I need to complete this topic. So this is just a 15-minute video where I'll be quickly covering what all things you need to mention in your answer. So in case, if you want the complete lecture, that you can get the PDF notes. I have shared the details in the description. And in case if you're looking for the class, that also is available in the description. So when we talk about Watermore's view, you talk about the categories: capitalists, middle class, petty traders, and working class. Then Harold Gold, study on rickshawala. So you talk about anonymity and caste weakening in cities. We discussed that in detail. So that's another separate study where multiple applicability is there for that study. Again, Andre Bette's observation on caste and class, like caste, class, dissonance, and then role of caste in trade unions and job allocation, caste role in urban industrial society. Okay, and then you can talk about the 5 broader features of industrial class in India, which we have discussed in the class. So I'll briefly talk about that again. So landless workers as industrial laborers, and the rural system and urban migration, geographical mobility of labor, and the caste blindness in industries and limited employment of women and children. Then you talk about the key dynamics of the working class, like organized versus unorganized. So difference in wages, the conditions, the security, and the social worlds and everything. Holmstrom's wage categories. That's more than family wage or equal to family wage, less than family wage, pauperized. That category we can discuss. And then impact of industrialization on class structure. So that is transition from cumulative to dispersed privileges and changes in class dynamics due to urbanization. So all these we can mention, and towards the end, by concluding, in conclusion, you can talk about evolving industrial class structure. It is keep on evolving from 1870s. It is again, even now also it's evolving, and the challenges and opportunities for inclusive growth. So this is how, if a long answer is asked, means 20 marker, this is all these things need to be captured. But if it's a short answer, depending upon the question, depending upon what exactly is asked, then you can write down a couple of perspectives and the definitions and the brief evolution. So that's how you need to answer. So guys, again, let me tell you, this is a revision session. So I'll quickly go through this. So how can you introduce? If you get a question, industrial class structure refers to, so you define, right? Division and relationship among various economic classes in industrial societies. Simple definition, right? So you can then talk about it emerges from, the mode of production, ownership, and the occupational roles individual play within the industrial economy. So you can talk about Marx perspective. Marx emphasizes 2 dominant class, right? Bourgeois and proletariat. So bourgeois means the capitalist who own the means of production and exploit labor for profit. And the proletariat is the working class who sell their labor for, earning wages. So this dichotomy reflects a deep economic and power imbalance where the bourgeois exploit the proletariat, and that leads to class conflict. Now let's talk about Max Weber's framework. In fact, that was adapted by Andre Bethe also. So Weber provided a more, nuanced understanding, recognizing the multiplicity of class divisions beyond just two. So he talked about propertied upper class, that's a large-scale capitalist and owners, and then white-collar workers, that's the professionals and managers who rely on skills rather than ownership, and then petty bourgeois, the small business owners operating within limited means, and then manual laborers. So that's the industrial and factory workers engaged in physical labor. So four classes: property upper class, white collar workers, petty bourgeois, and manual laborers. Now we need to talk about evolution of industrial society in India. And that again you can divide into pre-independence, post-independence. Within pre-independence also you can further divide, right? So you can say industrialization began in India during British rule around 1870s, and this period witnessed slow and steady industrial growth that was spurred by the colonial demands. What are the major development during this time? Emergence of textile mills in Bombay, Mumbai, and then Ahmedabad and Calcutta. Right, and then you can talk about growth of iron and steel industries in the early 20th century. And then you discuss about expansion during the Swadeshi movement, which is again very important phase, which encouraged Indian-made goods to counter the British imports. Then you talk about the increased demands due to two world wars. So briefly, all this you can slightly mention, and then challenges for workers: the harsh working condition with long hours and the minimal wages, weak labor laws that allow the exploitation by the British-owned industries, and then lack of organization among workers. Though early trade unions like All India Trade Union Congress emerged, but still lack of organization was there. And talk about Marxist perspective by A.R. Desai. Industrialization was driven by capitalist motives to maximize profit and often exploiting the native labor. And then what is the functionalist view? It's focused on benefits of industrialization, such as meeting demands and providing employment. So talk about Marxist perspective and functionalist view. And then we discuss the post-independence period. Okay, so the Indian government took a lot of initiatives and active steps to regulate industries to promote socio-economic welfare. So you talk about the key features, right? Establishment of public sector industries such as the SAIL and BHEL. And you can talk about introduction of labor laws that's ensuring minimum wage, safe working condition, and social security aspects. And then the formation of national trade unions like INTUC, Indian National Trade Union Congress. And then talk about economic planning. Like industrialization was central to India's 5-year plans and emphasizing self-reliance and development. The government promoted small-scale industries alongside large-scale sectors to boost employment. So these are, things which you need to connect it with the growth of industrial class. And then post-LPG, the liberalization, privatization, and globalization reforms, in fact, marked a paradigm shift in India's industrial landscape. So here you can, talk about growth of the informal sector. So a significant portion of workers now employed under informal arrangements without job security. So a new classes have emerged here. And then income disparities, widening gap between high-paid professionals and low-paid laborers. And then CSR and innovation we can discuss. Like companies increasingly engage in CSR, corporate social responsibility, and social innovation to improve the public perception. And then growth of white collar jobs, that's expanding opportunities, right? Especially in IT, finance, and management sectors. We can talk about MorrisDMorris perspective. So Morris analyzed industrial labor behavior in colonial India, presenting two contrasting views. One is related to the shortage of labor and then the surplus of labor. So when we discuss shortage of labor, workers were in short supply and forcing employers to offer concessions. So strong rural ties that led workers to frequently return to villages, and that is causing high absenteeism and turnover. So when we talk about surplus labor, employers exploited the abundance of labor, imposing harsh working conditions, and dissatisfied with this kind of industrial work, laborers often return to the rural livelihoods and again are related to agriculture. And commonality between the two views, if you see, both highlight rural ties, right? Limiting, industrial labor supply. Now, what are the consequences? So because of the rural ties, in fact, limiting the rural supply. So consequences is high absenteeism and frequent labor turnover and slow growth of trade unions. We can look at different perspectives on industrial class structure. Talk about Bottomore's view, talk about Harold Gould study. Okay, so Bottomore is giving 4 classes: capitalist class, educated middle class, petty traders, and working class. So who are the capitalist class? Owners of industries and resources driven by profit motive. And then professionals, administrators, and skilled workers are the educated middle class. And small-scale entrepreneurs managing shops and local businesses, that's the petty traders. And then the industrial laborers earning wages for physical or semi-skilled work is the working class. Okay, now Harold Gold study. So here the key observation you can discuss is industrialization weakened the caste structures by providing anonymity in urban spaces. So people prefer that anonymity. And then lower caste individuals engaged in jobs like rickshaw pulling, so breaking traditional, caste-based occupations. So these points you can mention. That study is very interesting. I have given separately that study. Okay, and in the chapter on caste, I think it is given separately. You can talk about Andre Bethé on caste and class. So there is a dissonance between caste and class. Higher caste does not always imply higher class in industrial settings. Urbanization and industrialization disrupted the traditional caste hierarchies, general stuff. And then caste as a trade union basis. Caste and kinship often influence job allocation and union formation, right? And then, the phenomena of the sponsored mobility over the contested mobility, in fact, highlights caste-based favoritism in job markets. And then you talk about the caste in industrial society. Like earlier privileges were cumulative, like Brahmins in academia, Kshatriyas in defense, like that. Now caste privileges are dispersed due to urbanization. Now, this is very important. 5 broader features of industrial class. And if you get a question, you can discuss this. Landless workers. A significant proportion of industrial workers are landless migrants. And rural systems are not barriers. See, joint family system and caste ties do not prevent migration to urban centers. Talk about geographical mobility. See, industrial labor comes from multiple regions, indicating no geographical restrictions are there actually. So there is a geographical mobility, right? So this is one of the feature. And then caste blindness in industries. See, in industries claim to be caste neutral, but discrimination persists against untouchables. Then limited employment of women and children. See, there are legal restrictions which have reduced their presence in industries and that improving the gender equity. Okay, now let's talk about the key dynamics of the working class. Organized and unorganized sectors. Organized sector means workers enjoy better wages, job security, and union protection. Unorganized, it is characterized by the informal contracts, low wages, and lack of benefits. Now, Holmstrom's analysis. Workers can be categorized based on wages, like more than family wage. That means affording luxuries beyond the basic need. That's what more than family wage. Equal to family wage. That means they are meeting the essential needs. Less than family wage. That means struggling to sustain basic living standards. And then pauperized. That means living in absolute poverty. So guys, these are the areas that need to be covered in the topic of industrial class structure. So I just want to make sure that your preparation is aligned with this much of topics. And each of these can also be asked a separate question. Okay, so you need to prepare accordingly. And if the question is asked on 20 markers, you need to be in a position to arrange everything in a organized manner, balanced way. You can add things from each of the points that we have discussed. But if the question is specific to industrial structure, define and then talk about the Marx and Weber in the beginning, and then talk about a couple of perspective and the features. That's enough if it is a 10 marker, right? Again, if they ask any specific question from any of these what I've discussed, that again you need to handle accordingly. So what I've done here is just discuss 1 or 2 lines about each of the subtopic, but you should be in a position to write that in detail in case if they ask a separate question on that. So I hope your preparations are aligned with that. Okay, now what is the conclusion? See, India's industrial class structure has evolved significantly, and that is reflecting shift in economic policies, labor dynamics, and social stratification. Urbanization and industrialization have introduced mobility and challenged traditional hierarchies, persistent income disparities, caste-based discrimination, and informal labor conditions. All these highlight the need for inclusive and equitable industrial growth policies. So this is how you can conclude also. So that's about this session, guys. I hope you got some value for the time you spent here, because this is a revision session, and I presume that you have already covered the topic and you're attending this, then definitely you might have got significant value for the time you spent. You got a very good revision session. So that's about this session. And if this session helped you, share it with your friends also. And you can, if you're interested in the mentorship or the test series or the courses, check out the details in the description. So that's about this session. Thank you so much for attending. See you in the next video.